Hi, my name is Amanda Waddell, and I'm the Director of Zero Waste at the Repurpose Project. And I'm going to talk to you guys today about part 4 of the Plastic Pollution Education Program, which is Zero Waste Communities. I'm going to minimize myself so you guys can see the screen. So today we're going to talk about a solution to plastic pollution, which is zero waste communities. And we're going to talk about all of these bullet points, including all about zero waste and how it relates to climate change and creating zero waste communities all the way through zero waste lifestyle. And I want to start off with this graphic because it's really important that we all remember that we're all connected. We're connected to this earth, the resources, the animals, the ecosystems, the food that we eat, the sun, the air, water, and then also everything we create, vehicles, buildings, the infrastructure, everything. We're all connected. So I want to start out by showing you some municipal solid waste data that the EPA collects. And so this is EPA data for 2017. So in the United States, we all created 267 million tons of municipal solid waste. So municipal solid waste is everything we throw away as individuals, in communities, businesses, institutions. And that's a lot of waste. So you can see the blue line has gone up over the years. The orange line represents the per capita generation, the pounds per person per day, which has been steady between 4 and 5 pounds. The pie chart shows you how that municipal solid waste breaks down, meaning we landfill more than 50% of it, a quarter of it gets recycled, very small percentage composted, and some combusted as well. But this is all waste management. The EPA follows waste management, and this is really showing you what is done at the end of life with all of our stuff. But today we're going to talk about zero waste systems, and that's more resource management. So we want to manage resources, not waste. So we're putting waste management on their head and kind of shaking things up, and we want to create zero waste systems instead. So like we talked about in part 1 with plastic, really our current system is overconsumption in a linear system. So that means we just take resources from the earth, we make stuff, and then we throw it away. And we talked about the 50s a lot in the plastic pollution part as well, just how they got going with mass production of single-use plastics. But in the 50s, a lot of advertising got it started too. And also planned obsolescence. And if you're not familiar with that, it's the idea that products are designed to be short-lived in order to encourage people to buy more stuff. So it really contributes to this culture of wastefulness, encouraging us to buy new, to keep buying stuff. So it's just part of overconsumption. So what is zero waste? We're going to talk all about that right now. So the Zero Waste International Alliance has a really good definition of zero waste. It's a peer-reviewed definition, and I will read it to you. It's the conservation of all resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse, and recovery of products, packaging, and materials without burning, and with no discharges to land, water, or air that threaten the environment or human health. So I think that this definition is really good because it really emphasizes the upstream efforts as well as with downstream efforts to be zero waste and to really keep the environment in mind. So with zero waste system, nature really is our model, and we're all aware that nothing in nature is wasted. Nature is pretty phenomenal how they have cyclical systems. So even if there's leftovers from food animals eat, or leftovers from vegetation that they disturb, or even when animals defecate or die, all of those nutrients are collected in the ecosystems and they're just recycled into nature, and nature really benefits from all of that. We don't really follow that exactly with having a mostly linear system. And also remember that there really is no way. So wherever our trash goes, to a landfill or an incinerator, wherever it goes, that is near somebody's home or near ecosystems that have lots of plants and animals, or near streams or rivers. So there really is no way. So zero waste really is a journey. And I really like this graphic because it shows all of the major aspects of zero waste communities that I think are really important. including waste prevention, buying less and buying used, being inclusive. So making systems where everybody feels that they have an opportunity to reach zero waste. We really need to emphasize reusable systems designed for the environment, design out the toxins and harmful substances. We talked about that with plastic in the social justice and environmental justice that is a really big problem with the production of plastic. And then climate change mitigation, which we are going to talk about that more today. So with zero waste, looking at this zero waste hierarchy is really important. This is also from the Zero Waste International Alliance. And when you look at a hierarchy, the top portions, the largest portions, are where you really should and put most of your effort, and that's where you'll get most of the environmental outcomes. So rethink and redesign, reduce and reuse are really the largest portions of this hierarchy. And that really is where zero waste systems can make a big impact. That's where we want to put most of our focus. So zero waste systems also want to help create a circular economy. And so the basics of a circular economy means that while you take resources from the environment and you make products and packaging out of, but very far upstream in the design section of really making these products and packaging, you really create things for the environment so that these resources can stay in the system. And the way they stay in the system is that they are repairable, that they're really durable, they last a long time, and that they're reusable. But then ultimately at the end of life, they actually are recycled or compostable. So the Ellen MacArthur Foundation has done a lot with the circular economy, and they really design it, or they define it as designing out waste and pollution, keep products and materials in use, and regenerate natural systems. So we talked a lot about upstream and downstream in part one of this program, but with zero waste systems, really for upstream, we want clean production, we want product redesign and product stewardship. And remember, at the point of purchase is really where downstream starts. And with zero waste systems, we want reuse of our products and packaging. We want composting to take place, recycling, and then resource recovery parks to help us do all of this. And if you're not familiar with product stewardship, it really is where whoever produces or designs or sells a product really takes responsibility for that product or packaging throughout its whole life cycle, and really to help minimize impacts. So this is a picture of an old reusable, refillable Coca-Cola bottle that my husband has kept for decades. It's a really, really thick glass bottle that used to be returned, sanitized, and refilled and put it back out on the market. It's rather small, it's only 6.5 ounces. But this really is an example of a zero waste system we'd like to get back to. And if you remember when we talked about the Break Free from Plastic brand audits that take place annually, the data from 2019 showed that the Coca-Cola company as a brand, they were the #1 polluter worldwide. So they really shifted from these reuse and refill systems to single use, whether if it's aluminum can or really now more than ever, it's plastic bottles. So the idea of the Wasteberg really came out of Platt and Seldman when they looked at a lot of solid waste data. And the idea here is that for every ton of municipal solid waste downstream, there's 71 tons produced upstream. So really that shows that that's where our effort should be when we try and design zero waste systems. And this is really the upstream we're talking about, where you have deforestation. If you need to create mining, that's a picture of mining. There's a lot of transportation, getting the oil and the natural gas out of the ground, manufacturing, production. This is all the upstream stuff we're talking about. So zero waste systems also create jobs. This has also come out of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, where they said that for 10,000 tons of material, different types of ways to manage resources uses different amounts of jobs. So here, this shows that landfilling, when you manage 10,000 tons of material, it really only creates one job. There can be one operator in that backhoe type machine, whatever it is, that is moving around all of the trash in a landfill. And that one person can really manage those 10,000 tons of material. But with composting 10,000 tons, you need 4 jobs because it takes a different skill set. There's different things to do. Also with recycling, for 10,000 tons of recyclables, it takes 10 jobs. And that's because there's different materials to sort through. But it just shows you that when you manage resources instead of managing waste, it creates more jobs. But reuse centers really creates the most jobs. So they estimate between 75 and 200 jobs per 10,000 tons of material. And these are pictures from the Repurpose project, which is a creative reuse center, a junk store that you guys have heard me talk about. And while I do work for them, I don't work in the store day to day, but I know what they do. And they really work really hard. And it takes a lot of people to manage all of these resources. So they get in donations. So they have to sort through these donations. They have to price them. They have to organize them and get them out into the store. And then they help people buy this stuff to sift through it, to see if it will work, to look if there's this or that. So it really does take a lot of people to run a reuse center. So zero waste is all about culture change and system change. It will take a long time to reach zero waste. It's really a long process, but really what we want is to emphasize the upstream changes with design. We also want to emphasize that we're managing resources, not waste, and resources that have value. And we want those products and packagings to be reusable, recyclable, or compostable. And zero waste is all about community. We need the whole community involved. We need the whole community weighing in, and we want to keep resources local. Local is very important. We want to build up the local systems. So next we're going to talk about zero waste and climate change. So again, the problem is overconsumption in a linear system. And just like with plastics, we talked about this a lot with plastics in part one, there are greenhouse gas emissions during every step of this linear system, so from resource extraction to disposal. But with zero waste systems, we're talking about more than just plastic in the plastic life cycle. We're talking about all of the stuff, all of the food, all of the products, all the packaging. And in a linear system, after disposal, you have to start all over again with resource extraction. So that's just more greenhouse gas emissions. And again, this is the upstream. This is where all the greenhouse gas emissions are taking place through deforestation, creating the mines, the transportation, all the manufacturing that goes into that. And really, when we want to create zero waste systems, we call this resource consumption and waste. This is how zero waste can help tackle climate change. This is how zero waste can be part of climate change mitigation through resource consumption and waste. And what this really means, it includes all the food and stuff we purchase and we consume as individuals, in a community, and within businesses and institutions. And it also includes how we dispose of it. So resource consumption and waste plays a big role in greenhouse gas emissions. But as a community, we can tackle this through creating zero waste systems. So here is another way to explain it. So the pie chart on the left is from a US EPA report that came out in 2009, where they looked at greenhouse gas emissions on a system-based view. So what they said is, through the provision of goods, so that's all of the stuff that is made and that we get and use, and through provision of food, so that is, making food, getting food to us, and the use of those applications equals up to 50% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. So zero waste systems really play a role in all of our stuff and all of the food. So it just shows you that if we create zero waste systems, we can help tackle that 50% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. It doesn't mean that we will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% in the United States. It just means that we can help reduce those greenhouse gases in those categories by creating zero waste systems. And the pie chart on the right takes those same data and looks at the same provision of goods, provision of food and use, but they also take into account international travel, because a lot of our stuff and our food comes from overseas. So that kind of adds a section of even more greenhouse gases. So if we created local systems like zero waste systems and communities want to do, we can even cut into more of those greenhouse gases and remove those. So the solution, the way zero waste systems can help mitigate climate change, is through creating a circular economy. And we can really address this resource consumption and waste by creating better systems in 4 ways. So we're going to talk about these 4: organics, creating reuse, repair, and share economies, eliminating single-use plastics, and making better systems and effective recycling. So the first way zero waste systems can help mitigate climate change is by creating organics, reductions, and collection systems in a community. So this is another hierarchy. This one is from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and it's the hierarchy to reduce food waste and grow communities. So again, the top portion is where you want to put the most effort. The biggest section right here is source reduction. So we really want to prevent wasting food, and you can do that a lot through planning. And that's the number one area. We should prevent food from being wasted in the first place. But when there is edible food out there, we really need to rescue it. We need to get that edible food to hungry people and animals, and we need to instill systems that will make that happen in our community. And then we need to compost the rest. So the rest are the food scraps. So we really shouldn't be composting anything other than, apple peels, apple cores, banana peels, food scraps like that, plate scrapings and stuff like that. But we absolutely do need to collect that. So a little bit on methane. So if you're not familiar with methane, it is a really strong greenhouse gas with a global warming potential 84 times greater than CO2 in a 20-year time period. And that's because methane doesn't last as long in our atmosphere as carbon dioxide, but it's much more potent, meaning it has a higher global warming potential. And methane it means it has a much higher heat trapping ability. But as you can see from this pie chart, this is from a US EPA report of methane emissions. Landfills are the third largest producer of methanes in the United States. And methane is released in landfill when organic material break down, and it's with lack of oxygen. So organic material is the food. We're talking a lot about food, but it's also the yard waste, paper products, anything that's like biodegradable. So basically, we want to keep all of that out of the landfill. And this is one way that zero waste systems help mitigate climate change. So just as a bit of a reference, for 2017, this is from US EPA data again, the food waste that was generated in the US was 40.7 million tons, but only 2.6 tons of that was composted. So over 30 million tons of food waste was landfilled in the United States in 2017. So that's a lot, and we need to really get on that and tackle that. So organic systems in zero waste communities help mitigate climate change upstream by creating plans to help reduce wasted food in the first place, but then also creating systems in communities to help get food, edible food, to hungry people and animals. And then downstream, we need policies that really be an organic material from the landfill. Again, that's the food waste, the vegetation, and the paper products. So basically, we need to mandate composting programs and make that universal so everybody has an opportunity to compost their organics. So the second way zero waste systems help mitigate climate change is by creating reuse, repair, and share economy. And this is really exciting to me. I like this. And the first thing really, we just need to reduce consumption. We just maybe all need less stuff or buy less stuff. But when we do buy something, we need to lengthen the life of that, meaning buy durable items and then keep them a really long time. Also buying used, that's huge. What about share and repair? So what if our items were easily repairable? What if we had tool libraries so not everybody needed power tools, but instead you could check out a unique tool if you needed it for a project. And this even includes deconstruction. So when I talk about deconstruction, I really mean two things. So it could be everyday items. So a chair should be a chair as long as possible. That's the highest and best use for a chair. But once it's been repaired, it can't be repaired anymore, or it's stained or ripped, it's just beyond use, beyond repair. That chair should be deconstructed, meaning take it in the different parts, sort of separating them basically. So if there's wood in that chair, take that apart and keep it separate. If there's fabric or material, keep that separate. Maybe some is synthetic, some is natural. So separate that out. If there's any metal in the chair, separate that out. And then keep those resources in the system through reuse or recycling. So this is our life cycle that we talked about in part one. where we have the earth gives us resources, and then we refine them or we process them or we manufacture. We have transportation, we have the consumption, our homes, and then the different ways we can dispose of them. But if we create these reuse, repair, and share economies, we can really cut down on the greenhouse gases that are associated with resource extraction, manufacturing, transportation, and some that have to do with disposal as well. If we can reduce consumption, if we can buy durable products that last a long time, if we can buy used, if we can capture our stuff in reuse systems and get them back and keep them locally, really greenhouse gases will be reduced. So this is a huge opportunity for local communities to build up the local systems, create jobs, and reduce greenhouse gases. So number 3, eliminate single-use plastics and create reuse and refill systems. So with zero-waste communities, we really do want to design out waste, and single-use plastics just really don't fit into zero-waste systems. So this is the life cycle from the film that we all watch, and it's a really good way to think about how plastic is made from the beginning, when natural gas is taken from the earth and it's refined, and then production, all the way to different ways that it's disposed of. So we really want to stop this from happening. We don't want single-use plastics made anymore, but instead we want these reuse and refill systems. So what we're talking about here are reusables, any types of reusable bags, bottles, containers. And if you get a really good bottle and bags and containers, you can really eliminate the upstream greenhouse gases emissions from resource extraction, refining, and transportation, because you eliminate the process of making all of those single-use plastics if you just replace them with reusables. And so I would also like to say that zero-waste systems can go even further and establish refill systems for to-go. And this really is the future of zero-waste communities, where our coffee to go will even come in reusable coffee cups that we have a system for capturing those, sanitizing them, and using them again. And the same thing for to-go food. It will come in containers that we are able to capture, sanitize, and reuse again. These kind of programs really take a lot of community engagement and involvement, and really that's what zero waste systems are about. We want the whole community involved. We want the whole community engaged, and we really think that this can happen. So the last way that zero waste systems can help mitigate climate change is through effective recycling. So here we're talking about mechanical recycling as local as possible of our glass, plastic bottles, metal, and paper. And we really also want in zero waste communities to have minimum content policy. And this is really important for, city and county governments to adopt these green purchasing policies, where they are mandated basically to buy products that have a minimum content of post-consumer recycled content. So this is a big part of zero waste communities, because we want to buy recycled, and this really closes the loop. It helps these resources stay as local as possible. So I did another greenhouse gas emissions modeling through the US EPA's WARM model to look at these different material types. And this time I looked at cardboard, mixed paper, aluminum cans, steels, and glass. And we looked at plastic in part 1, so I didn't redo that. But again, this is a stacked bar chart. And remember that a negative number equals an emissions reduction. So our scenario was, I wanted to see the greenhouse gas emissions from landfilling 1 ton of each of these types of material. So that is the blue bar, which you can actually barely see for aluminum cans, steel cans, and glass. So there's really not much greenhouse gas emissions with landfilling those types of materials. But my alternate scenario was if I recycled a ton of those materials instead of landfilling. So you can see that the big winner there is aluminum cans. And if we are able to capture all of the aluminum cans and get those recycled and not landfill them, we will help mitigate climate change through reducing the greenhouse gases from the upstream production of those aluminum cans. And that really is the big winner. So it just goes to show you how much energy in greenhouse gases we could save if we could capture and recycle all of our aluminum cans. So these kinds of systems we really need to help make effective in our community. So these 4 ways that zero waste systems can help mitigate climate change really also effectively create a zero waste community. And this graphic is from the film, and you guys know that I really love it. It just shows how well we create a circular economy. We keep resources local, we manage resources through zero waste systems. And also it shows that we can mitigate climate change through establishing zero waste communities as well. So let's talk about zero waste communities. So this graphic really is what we're going to talk about, all these bullet points of a zero waste communities. And one thing I want to point out is we need community participation when trying to establish a zero waste community. That is very important. And we're also really trying to create a culture change where we want people to value resources. But all of these bullet points are really, really important. And we're going to touch on these. They're really important to design for the environment, consume less, policies for preventing waste, share and repair, establishing these reuse systems, buying used, of course. Source separation is so important. The effective recycling, composting, and have resource recovery parks that really help you reach your diversion goals. So this is a map from Zero Waste USA, and it shows communities in the United States that are either working towards zero waste or have established a zero waste resolution. So they're going to work towards zero waste. And they're not just in California or the Northeast, they're sprinkled throughout the United States. But I think there's so many advantages for communities to work towards zero waste that we're going to see this map grow with different communities, more communities working towards zero waste in the near future. So zero waste communities, we've talked a lot about this. There are so many benefits like creating the green jobs, creating a culture that values resources, mitigating those climate change, keeping the resources local is so important. And I mean, that's especially important for, the organics because you create a soil amendment when you divert them from the landfill. That also helps with the climate change mitigation. Keeping resources local is good with the reusable items too. But there's so many other reasons to create zero waste communities. And a lot of, just like Zero Waste Gainesville here locally, there are a lot of other zero waste community groups throughout the United States that are really helping their community work towards zero waste. And that is important. So zero waste communities begin by establishing a goal, like zero waste by 2040 is a good goal. Passing a resolution to be a zero waste community, establishing a timeline, doing a waste audit. So that's really important to know locally what waste you produce a lot. So most communities produce a lot of similar waste. They're throwing away a lot of the same stuff, but your community might have something unique in their waste. And so it's good to take a look at what it is. Zero waste planning, there's a lot of planning that goes on. And through this planning, you often establish guiding principle, goals, and objectives. You come up with a master plan to help you reach zero waste. Education and outreach is just so essential from start and then ongoing for this decades-long process. And you need zero waste infrastructure. So that's what we're going to talk about now. Within zero waste communities, the planning and the infrastructure that is needed. So you do the zero waste planning through workshops and stakeholder engagement. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to get out in the community to talk about zero waste and really to listen to how the community feels about it, to talk about all the different types of stakeholders. And you generally come up with guiding principles, and you want those to be inclusive, and they're inclusive when you listen to the different stakeholders in your community. And you want equity because you want everybody to have what they need to reach zero waste. And you often establish objectives. So these objectives are really important to me, but it might not be the only objectives. There might be more than these, but climate change mitigation, creating jobs, and keeping resources local are all really important objectives to zero waste communities. And these often come out of the planning process. So Zero Waste USA has about half a dozen tools that communities can use to help them in the planning process. And they're pretty fantastic tools. This is just a small example of one. They have a rather large spreadsheet. It's called a community planning checklist. And what a community does is it looks on this checklist to say what you do have, or maybe what you have in development, or you leave it blank if you don't have it. And it allows you to get a really good picture of what your community has or doesn't have as far as zero waste systems. And it really leads you to the service opportunity analysis. So here again, you look at the gaps. What your community doesn't have is really what you need to reach zero waste. It helps the community really get organized through the planning process. So these Zero Waste USA tools are pretty helpful for our community. So eventually through the planning process, you get to the master plan. And again, the master plan should have guiding principle, goals, and objectives. It should have specific recommendations on how the community can reach zero waste. And these are really based on the stakeholder input. And you really want that stakeholder input so your community feels ownership over this plan. And the master plan is often based on your local waste and best practices, but a zero waste master plan will generally include the fact that we need source separation. It will recommend policies that will then drive the programs. It'll recommend extended education and outreach, and really will note the infrastructure that's needed for your community to reach its diversion potential. So now we have a zero waste community planning, but how do you implement it? So we really need the physical infrastructure and we need social infrastructure. So the physical infrastructure, really, we need universal collection systems. So that means that every resident, no matter if you live in an apartment or a single family home, you need to be able to source separate. And source separation means that you keep all your resources separate so they retain value. They're able to stay in the system better. So source separation is at your home, you would have a landfill cart, you would have your recycling bins. So we have two, and then you would have an area for your food scraps or your compostable items. And the thing about zero waste communities is that we want these standardized. We want the same colors for the different separations throughout the community. So maybe you want your organics to always be green, have green signs or a green bin. And we want these same types of source separation, colors, and messaging throughout our community, whether if it's at a park, at your home curbside, at a library, at a school, it should all have a same theme, same colors. So then with physical infrastructure, we also need resource recovery centers or resource recovery parks. They'll really help with our diversion. And this is a picture of the city of El Cerrito in California, and they have a drive-through resource recovery system where you can drop off a dozen or so different categories of materials. And this way, those resources stay in the system. Now, locally, we have the Little Vita Round Environmental Park, a transfer station, and this environmental park has a lot of stuff to help us be zero waste. We definitely need more. But one example of what we have here in Alachua County is a hazardous household center. And Alachua County residents are able to take our household hazardous items to them and drop them off at no charge. And this is another source separation. So if you have paint or pesticides or electronics, you should really keep those aside. When they've collected enough of them and you want to go out there, you go out there and drop them off, and they get handled in the proper way. Some of them get deconstructed to take the different materials out, some get recycled. But it's really something that not every community has. So we're really pretty proud of that. And we also have the Eco-Industrial Park coming soon. And they have actually, this is right by the transfer station. And this has the horizontal infrastructure in it, but they don't have anybody there actually physically working yet. And what I would like to see this as being more of a resource recovery park with the goal or the mission to help us reduce our waste and then help us divert what is left. That's not exactly the mission right now, but we still have time to work on this. So more about the physical infrastructure. So we need processing capacity. So one thing with a zero waste community that we will want is a policy where nothing reusable goes into the landfill. And if we had that goal tomorrow, we would realize that we don't have enough capacity for everything that's thrown away that's reusable. So once we define what that is and we make a policy, we would then need new programs to help capture all these reusable items, process them, and resell them. And the thrift stores right now are at capacity. So we would need more space to sell these used items. It would create more jobs. And it's really something in the future here in Gainesville that we will look forward to. But the same thing with recycling and composting. We will get to a point where we will have policies in place where nothing that is traditionally and effectively recycled should be placed in our landfill. And the same thing, nothing that is compostable should go to our landfill. But if those policies came down tomorrow, we would realize, well, we don't have enough processing for organics or food scraps. And so really what we need is to think long-term about how to manage all of those resources and then create systems to capture them all. And we can definitely do that. And then with zero waste communities, you need a lot of the social infrastructure. So this is the education and outreach. And Zero Waste Gainesville and the Repurpose Project do a lot of this. And it's really necessary to, get out in the community and talk to them about what zero waste is through tabling, through different forums and workshops and social media. And we definitely do a lot of that, but so much more is needed. We don't do as much as needed. So this is really an ongoing process that will be with us throughout the decades of this zero waste planning and implementation. So something specific with social infrastructure is that we will need local policies that focus on waste prevention. So one thing that some communities are doing are passing this, a ban that helps really with waste prevention. It's called a single-use foodware and litter reduction ordinance. And they did this in Berkeley, California, and they've done it in other communities where they really have four main bullets, four main parts of this. And one is that dine-in eating, you have to use reusables, durable items for dining in restaurants. Another one is accessories only upon request. And this is like napkins, sauces, plastic utensils, all of that only if the person actually needs those stuff. They have to actually ask for them. So instead of just throwing them in with your to-go food. And then establishing reusables for to-go systems. And this is pretty much a big deal. So again, it's that coffee in a reusable cup to go. It's the to-go food in reusable containers. So these systems can happen. And I think it would be pretty phenomenal if we could do it here in Gainesville. Also, a charge for disposables. So within this ordinance, they have certain criteria for disposables. They have to be BPI certified. And so that is Biodegradable Products Institute. And everything that is BPI certified now is also PFAS free. So PFAS are per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. They are a really long-lasting chemical that you really don't want in the environment or in you. So if we have to use to-go containers for food or for coffee, there should absolutely be a charge. So that's a disincentive. And it also should be of a material that is the best disposable as possible. And that's really a precautionary principle. You don't want to move from one disposable material to just as bad disposable material. So I really think our community can work towards the single-use foodware and litter reduction ordinance, and zero waste communities are definitely moving in this area. So the social infrastructure is very needed in zero waste communities. We really want to do this culture change. So we do that through getting out in the community and talking about what zero waste is, raising the awareness. We can do it through social media, and also through these workshops like I'm doing right now. And we really want to do a lot of stakeholder engagement, listening to what people in our community think of with zero waste. And the overall goal is the stakeholder engagement is to really have the community feel that they have ownership of the zero waste master plan throughout their community. So with zero waste communities, businesses and institutions really play a role as well. So here we're talking about colleges and universities, K through 12s, businesses, and even hospitals. So the Zero Waste International Alliance set forth some business principles, and basically they look at the triple bottom line, thinking about people, planet, and profit. And those three are very important to establishing sustainable systems. And I'm not going to spend a long time here, but just know that they are out there. There are principles that help businesses to reach zero waste and that they should strive for if they want to be a zero waste business or a zero waste institution. And there are benefits to businesses and institutions to working towards and achieving zero waste, and it can often save them money. But businesses can often influence upstream changes, and this is where it's pretty phenomenal. But think of all the stuff that comes into a business to make their whatever they're making, whether if it's food or products or whatever it is. they might look upstream and to their distributors and say, well, yes, I do need this product, but maybe you don't have to package it in plastic and then in a big plastic bag. What if we could use some type of reusable box instead that you then take back and then you refill when I need another order or something like that? So businesses have an opportunity to make these upstream changes that are so necessary. We talked about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but marketing edge is a big one. So if you have a business or an institution and you can say we're working towards zero waste or we achieve zero waste, that is a really good marketing edge, but really it's the right thing to do these days to work towards zero waste. TRUE stands for total resource use and efficiency, and it is a zero waste standardization. So you can go through the TRUE program and you can get to be zero waste certified as a business. And this is often used for bigger businesses. And these are some that businesses that you might recognize that have achieved true zero waste. So they've gone through the certification with TRUE. So zero waste communities, lifestyle. So this is the day-to-day stuff that people can do on their own or within their family day-to-day to make an impact with zero waste in their communities. So zero waste lifestyle basically means that living in a way that creates little to no waste. And it really encompasses all of these bullet points, just like a community does. Buying less, buying quality, buying local and used, just realizing that resources have value, avoiding single use of any material, especially plastic, promoting a circular economy through your consumption practices. But zero waste is not a reason to buy all new eco-friendly items. Recycling to excess, a movement just for the privileged or temporary, and it shouldn't be about avoidance. And zero waste should not be an individual's responsibility. So I use that word a lot when I talk about lifestyle, avoid single-use plastics, for example, but it really shouldn't be that. So that's why I want you as individuals to help me gain momentum on establishing zero waste systems and zero waste communities. And if we can do that, we can make it easier for an individual to live a zero waste lifestyle. Because right now you have to go a lot out of your way to be zero waste. And that puts off a lot of people in the community because it's just can be hard with planning. So how do you begin your zero waste journey? Well, I encourage people to do a waste audit. So really what that means is you save, sort, and study the stuff that you are throwing away as an individual or a family. And you can learn a lot from doing that. And then you make a plan based on those data, what you figured out. And your plan should really start with reduce. How can you reduce this waste that you're throwing away? Thinking about the circular economy, so keeping resources in the system. So you probably have a lot of stuff that can help you reach zero waste already. Reusable bags, glass jars, real utensils, cloth napkins. If you create a zero waste kit and have that with you, that can help you. I encourage you to buy used if you do need some items that will help you on your individual zero waste journey. Check out books from the library. Figure out what motivates you. You guys know what motivates me. My love of animals, my connection to nature. But we're really lucky here locally that we have a zero waste store called Life on Plastic. And that allows us locally here in Gainesville to go and look at products and kind of test them out, see what they look like, learn more about them before you buy them. So this is just a picture of a lot of items that my family and I use. And it's a lot of stuff we've had for a long time, like reusable bags and pouches and silverware and napkins and bottles and jars. And it's really nothing fancy. It's just reusable stuff that we wash and use over and over. So zero waste shopping for food is a big area where individuals can have a big impact because we need to just constantly keep buying food. So I encourage people to buy unpackaged or bulk food whenever they can. Using your reusable bags and jars is very helpful, and buying from local farmers is good. So we have a CSA, that's a community supported agriculture, meaning we have we pay for a share of a local farm. So we get farm fresh produce from October through June, and most of that is unpackaged. If it is packaged, the good thing about buying from a local farmer is that you can tell them right there. Often the farmers there or the people that work on the farm, and you can say, hey, you know, I really love these green beans. They're delicious, but I don't want them packaged in this plastic bag. Here, you can have the bag back. I'll take the green beans. So you can talk to them one-on-one. If you see the strawberries here, they're from a farm. Strawberry season in Florida is roughly from January to May. So during that time, our family, we buy strawberries like crazy. We'll buy a whole flat each week. And the strawberry farmers will take back the cardboard boxes and the small green plastic baskets, and they will reuse them over and over. So really, when you buy local, you generally have more opportunities to avoid waste. And buying peanut butter from the peanut butter machine is one example I use, because I'll take in a glass jar that maybe used to be a jelly jar or a spaghetti sauce jar that I've cleaned out. I know how much it weighs. I know the tare. So I fill it up with peanut butter and I tell them what the tare weight is at checkout, and I only pay for the peanut butter. And it's a great way to reduce your waste. But with shopping, because we all do need some stuff from time to time, but really we just want to reduce consumption and really think critically. Do you need that new item, even if that new item is related to your zero waste effort? And if you haven't already, I encourage you to read The Story of Stuff. It's a book, but it's also a 20-minute video that really can help you understand this. So if you do need to buy something, really try and think, is it durable? Is it reusable? Is it repairable? Does it fit into the circular economy? I encourage you to buy used first. So we really have great used clothing stores here in Gainesville. So we try to buy all of our clothes used first. And if we can't find something, we might buy new, but we always attempt to buy used clothes first. Catalog choice is a great way to cut down on your junk mail. It is actually run by the Story of Stuff Project. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, junk mail is recyclable. And you're right, it is. I encourage you, if you get junk mail, most of it is paper-based, please do recycle it. But just think about the fact that if you can reduce the production of that junk mail in the first place, that's really a more effective strategy with zero waste than just thinking, oh, I can recycle it. And one thing I personally like is to make food from scratch, mostly baking from scratch. I really like to make cookies and cakes and bread and muffin. I also make our salad dressing. We have a bread machine, so it makes dough so we can make pizzas. And that's just fun for me. It's just my personal way. It helps me reduce waste, and it's also kind of like a hobby. So zero waste equals using reusables. It really does. So if you're on the go, packing a lunch and everything reusable is great. These items on the picture on the left is exactly what my daughters use to pack their lunch for schools or camps. The pouches you see are over 10 years old. The girls have been using them, and I just wash them in the washing machine on the weekends. Real silverware containers and a water bottle, score, that's what you need. Zero waste on the go. I always keep real silverware and a napkin, a pint cup or two, and one of those small collapsible reusable bags in my purse. So if I'm ever somewhere and I need a cup, I've got it. If I'm ever somewhere and I want to eat something, but they have plastic utensils, I can say, no, thank you, I've got my own. And then around the house, you probably have containers, and no matter what the material is, I encourage you to use your reusable containers, whether if they're glass, metal, or plastic. I personally am slightly obsessed with glass. I absolutely love glass containers. I keep glass jars, and we use them for so many things. They are our drinking glasses. I put bulk items that I buy in the bulk section at the grocery store. I transfer it into glass jars at home. We freeze in glass. We freeze vegetables. If we have like beans or stew or something like that, I'll freeze it in glass jars. And glass jars are just really, really ultra usable. And I just don't think they should be a single use item. So zero waste is so much more than recycling. And really what the goal of zero waste lifestyle is to reduce and reuse extensively on the front end or upstream, so much that you don't have that much to recycle on the back end or at the end of the day. But effective recycling combined with buying products made with post-consumer recycled content really closes the loop. And that's really what we want to create in zero waste systems. And you can help with your zero waste lifestyle. So recycling does really help with climate change, and it does help to create a circular economy. But composting, so recycling food scraps and yard waste is a pretty exciting thing. You can do it in your backyard, or we actually do have 2 community composters in town. The biggest well-known one is Beaten Path Garden. and you can get a subscription with them, and they will take your food scraps from you and they will compost them. And basically they create a soil amendment that is just phenomenal. But before you compost, I encourage you to reduce wasted food first, meaning do all you can to prevent wasting food. So eat your leftovers. Don't forget about stuff in the back of your fridge or pantry. But the food scraps, what you should be composting are really the apple cores, peels, vegetable scraps, stuff like that. And if you want to do it in your backyard, you should mix it with a bunch of dead leaves. That's really the best thing. And your compost bin needs air, water, and the food you provide. It's really a living system. It's a pretty neat, it has microorganisms that break down. There's often worms in there and other critters, and it really does create a rich soil amendment. So in summary, with lifestyle, zero waste isn't all or nothing. It's more about the journey than the destination. Zero waste takes a long time in a community or even you getting to zero waste, and that is okay. It is more about the journey. If you make one waste reduction effort, they often build on themselves, so that is okay. Sometimes it's important to set an intention when you're working towards zero waste. That can help you make your commitment. I encourage you to write to companies that are wasteful in their products or packaging. Zero waste lifestyle, it can be privileged or costly, but it really doesn't have to be. And in fact, a lot of stuff I do helps me to save money. And I also encourage you to advocate for zero waste system and help with culture change. And that will really help the process move along. So that is the end of the Zero Waste Community's presentation. I just want to remind you that as consumers and community members that we have the power to make a difference. As an individual, you can change some lifestyle habits to work towards zero waste. I encourage you to support businesses that are working towards zero waste. You can start a zero waste movement in your community if you don't have one already started. And if you're locally, you can help us support zero waste efforts here in Gainesville, Florida. And remember, our goal is progress, not perfection. So thank you.